What's up, everyone? It's Teach Me Mr. P. Today, we're talking about Chapter 7, Lesson 1, Adding Fractions with Unlike Denominators. Get your paper, get your pencil. Let's do some math. Alright, so up to this point, we've been adding fractions, but they've always had the same denominator. Now we're dealing with fractions that have different denominators. Is it even possible to add fractions with different denominators? Well, let's find out. Let's take, for example, 1/2 plus 1/4. The first thing we have to find is what's known as a common denominator. Well, let's take a look at the denominators. We have 2 and a 4. If I was to list the multiples of 2, I would say 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and so on, counting by 2's. If I was to list the multiples of 4, I would say 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and so on. What you have to do here is, in your head or on paper, make a list of all the multiples of each denominator. 2, and then 4, and then find which one they have in common. In this case, a good common denominator to use would be 4. Since a multiple of 2 is 4, and a multiple of 4 is also 4. So let's put these two tiles together and see if we can fit in some tiles that are equal to 1/4, and let's see how many of them can fit. That's 1/4, 2/4. Now if you notice, 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. They're equal. So this is 2/4, and I'm going to add 3/4. So if you can see here, 1, 2, 3/4 is equal to 1/2 plus 1/4. So for an answer for this problem, you could say that 1/2 plus 1/4 is equal to 3/4. But what if you didn't choose 4 as a common denominator? Are there other numbers you could possibly choose? Well, you might notice that a multiple of 2 is 8, and a multiple of 4 is also 8. So that means I could use a denominator of 8 for both of these fractions. Let's see how many eighths will fit into this. 1/8, 2/8. Notice that 2/8 is equivalent to 1/4. They're equal. 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8. So we could also say that 1/2 plus 1/4 is equal to 6/8. They're equivalent. But what if you didn't choose fourths or eighths? Are there other options to use? Well, let's see. Another common multiple of 2 and 4 is 12. Because 2 times 6 is 12, and 4 times 3 is 12. Let's see if a denominator of 12 will work with this as well. 1/12, 2/12, 3/12, 4/12, 5/12, 6/12, 7/12, 8/12, 9/12. I can fit 9/12 in this as well. So another answer could be 1/2 plus 1/4 is equal to 9/12. Alright, now by now you're probably asking yourself, well, Mr. P, that's great, I understand that, but what if I don't have fraction tiles? Then what do I do? Then it's hard. I can't line up fraction tiles and see what fractions are equivalent to other fractions. So let's see if we can do this on paper and pencil without using fraction tiles. So let's take example, the same exact one. Let's take 1/2 plus 1/4. 1/2 plus 1/4. Alright. Now the first thing I want to do is notice that my denominators are not the same, so I can't just add my numerators like usual. I have to take my two denominators and find a common denominator. So let's take these two and find some multiples of them. So for example, let's take 2 off to the side here. And let's list some multiples. I have 2. The next one would be 4. The next one would be 6. Then 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, how many should I find? Well, I'd find at least 4 or 5. Now, I listed a lot more than 4 or 5 because I want to prove a point. But in your case, it shouldn't take you much more than 4 or 5 multiples to find one that they have in common. So now I've found some multiples of 2. Let's try to find some multiples of 4. Let's start over here. 4. The next one is 8, 12, 16, 20, and 24. That should be enough. We should be able to find some common multiples here. So let's start at the top. Do they both have 2 in common? Well, I have a 2 here, but there's not a 2 over here, so no. They don't have 2 in common. The next one is 4. Do they have 4s in common? I have a 4 here, and I have a 4 here, so yes. 4s are common. What about 6s? I have a 6 here, but there's no 6 over here, so no. No 6s. 8s are common. 10s? Not common. 12, yes, 12s are common. Now, we found 3 common multiples already. Any one of these are fine to use. I usually choose the least common multiple, or the LCM. It's the smallest common multiple. And then what I usually do is I come down underneath my fractions and I rewrite them. But instead of writing them with denominators of 2 and 4, I use the least common multiple. In this case, would be 4. Now I ask myself, okay, I'm using a denominator of 4. What did I do to this 2 to turn it into a 4? Well, I multiplied it by 2. I took 2 and I multiplied it by 2 to give me 4. So since I multiplied the denominator by 2, I also have to multiply the numerator by 2 to make this an equivalent fraction. So 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 2 is 2. And you should recognize that 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. Now I'm still adding these fractions, so make sure you put your sign there so you know what you're doing. And I ask myself, okay, what did I do to this 4 to make it a 4? And you're probably thinking, well, that's a silly question. You didn't do anything to that 4 to make it a 4. It was already a 4. Perfect. Since I didn't do anything to the 4, I don't have to do anything to the 1, and I just bring it right over. Now, I have 2/4 plus 1/4. Hey, now my denominators are common. I can add these now. Let's add them. 2 plus 1 is 3. And your denominator always stays the same. And you get an answer of 3/4.